Brent Musburger was there for the mothership calling that game. How nervous did it get there at the end, Brent?
Well, you'll have to excuse the hounds baying there in the background. They're going to storm the court. Anyway, Dan, it was not too scary until the 6-foot, 8-inch power forward jumped up on the table in front of me, and then the table next to me cracked under his weight as he stepped over there. And so we certainly didn't want to see the tables fall back on the official score and everything. I listened to your setup about last night's game, and you're absolutely right. And the way it is set up, or the way the court lays out, a lot of your fans probably have not been to Bramlage in Manhattan, but for the Jayhawks, it would have been easy for the bench and Bill Self to exit to their right quickly, and they would have gotten off the floor. Now, Traylor, who was brushed by one of the fans, would not have. He would have been caught up in the melee. But I would suggest if you want to penalize that young fan, you just strap him inside a cage with Traylor, having seen that picture, and I can just guess at the outcome of that. But I think the coaches in that situation probably should shake hands with their other. In other words, if Weber and Bill had shaken hands before the game, see you in the Big 12 tournament, I see you next season, whatever the case might be, Bill would not have found himself caught up in the middle of that. So, yes, Maryland certainly did it the right way. But I'm going to be perfectly honest, Dan. At no time during that the other night did I feel any danger at all from the kids who rushed over to us because, of course, they identify us with television, and so they wanted to come over and they pointed their fingers up that they were number one. And as I'm trying to throw at the Sports Center, there was a woman who actually reached over with her iPhone and took a selfie as I was throwing it back to the studio. And Dan, I got to say, it's the first time that I've ever been live on television when somebody came in and took a selfie. That was so. But we were safe.
I don't want to sound like the old guy who wants kids off his lawn. I know nothing serious has happened, at least in a while, but let's just ensure that nothing ever happens like that. And that's all. You could have the kids go on the floor. They want to get on TV. We show it on the highlights, so they know they're going to get on TV. That's my only concern with this. We've seen this in football, too.
Dan, it is a legitimate concern. Safety. And you do not want to see anybody injured. I think way back in the past, we've had some tragic incidents when people have stormed the court. And I thought that the Kansas State officials handled it correctly. They came out. They said they failed, that their security group, probably the security guys, were probably caught up in watching the end of the game. I assume that most of them were from the Manhattan area and were pulling for Kansas State. As I jokingly said to people, look, it's late February. You're in Manhattan, Kansas. Your team is not having a good year. Your arch rival is there. You actually don't like them very well. So they got what I expected would happen because the 3 previous times that they had knocked off the Jayhawks, they had stormed the court. Now this is back-to-back years, and I'm sure the Jayhawk fans would stick their nose up in the air and say, storm the court when it means something, lads. And there is something to that. But the kids in Manhattan relieved a little steam and got it off their chests, and everybody was safe, and the table be repaired, and apologies are given, and life goes on. We turn it over to the editorialists now, and they'll make waves about, oh, my goodness, there's too much emphasis on college athletics. These coaches are paid too much money. Which way are we headed? Blah, 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 blah. But life goes on. We turn a page, and there'll be another game tonight. Someplace and somebody else will storm the court.
He's Brent Musburger from ESPN joining us, Dan Patrick Show. You were calling the game with Eric Parsegian, Iowa, Michigan, I think 1985, and the backup quarterback to the Chuck Long, Mark Vlasic, got caught up in the stampede, and he ended up needing knee surgery there. You remember that?
I don't remember that exact incident. I certainly remember the game, and I certainly remember being there with Era and the field goal at the end of that game, and I remember Bo Schembechler becoming enraged at an official And in those days, they did not have wireless headsets. And I can still see Bo starting to stomp out on the field, and the cord on his headset tightened up and ripped off his Michigan baseball cap. But Dan, I do not remember the injury incident at all.
Yeah, I just Paul Burmeister, who played at Iowa, he told us about that. He went to the game, and it was a great game. I think Rob Houghton, does that sound right? Had the field goal? Yeah.
He kicked the winning field goal.
And Jim Harbaugh was actually playing back then.
Yes, he was. Jim Harbaugh had played in that. I covered Jim several games. He was, fond memories, especially of a game when he hit, I believe it was Colasar against Ohio State in a big Wolverine win. Yeah, a lot of ancient memories. But I honestly, I really don't recall the injury.
I'm not sure about this with college basketball in where we're going with the sport. I maintain I don't know when there's a big win. I can watch a great game. I just don't know if anything means anything right now. It seems like everybody gets in the tournament. Doesn't matter what seed you are. The one and dones, and I don't know. Maybe I'm jonesing for a yesteryear here, Brent, where we knew the players, we knew when a game was big. We cared, when that big matchup, you look forward to, Georgetown playing St. John's. Can we ever get that back?
Well, only if they change the one and done rule, Dan. And it's interesting because you mentioned an awful lot of things that I talk about with people in and around the game and just casual fans. For example, we don't have the ability anymore in a college game to build stars. I mean, let's go back to Michael Jordan, who stuck around for a few years at North Carolina and won a championship with Dean Smith and James Worthy and Sam Perkins was there, and the great Duke teams of past years. I'm not sure what the answer is with the NBA and college because, in my opinion, both are being hurt by this. Now, and I'm going to say this, there's a couple of kids in the Big 12, and I don't need even throwing their names. I don't want to discuss them, but I know they're going to leave, and I know they're going to be first-round draft choices, and I'm going to tell you right now, they're not going to help anyone. They're still a good 2 or 3 years away from physically maturing. Unlike football players, for whatever reason, basketball players don't seem to realize how much tougher it is to survive at the NBA level. We make a big thing out of the college team winning 20 games or 25 games. There's one closing on 30. Yeah, well, let me tell you something. In the NBA, if you win 20 games, you still got 62 more to play. They don't realize that major step up. And when you go there, if you take a look at the salaries in the NBA, if you think that those guys are just going to bow and welcome you in and say, here, take my job, you got another thing coming. That is the real world up there. And for what I just don't quite understand. Football players seem to get it. I've talked to a lot of them, and they know how physically imposing that is at the NFL level when you're playing collegially. But it goes back to that issue, the one and done. And as a result, all of the things that you said are accurate about college basketball, and they all stem from that we cannot develop personalities, we can't develop stars, and by the way, we can't develop teams either because these kids, somebody whispers in their ear, you've got to go to the NBA. Yeah. He's not handling you right. You'll make some money and blah, 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 blah. On it goes. So, yes, there's a major, major issue there. And I would like to think that the new commissioner of the NBA, who I've been impressed from afar watching how he's handled things. And I hope he can approach this issue with the Players Association. Obviously, they've got to march in lockstep together. But both sports would be helped, college and the professional level. Now, I think I would say, okay, if you think you're ready for the NBA coming out of high school, and believe me, there's only a few kids that I can ever remember were, obviously, LeBron James being foremost. I thought Kevin Garnett was ready, even though he struggled a little bit originally. But Kobe Bryant, I've talked to Phil Jackson a lot about that. He wasn't ready when he came out. So kids need to go spend 2-3 years at the collegiate level and then move on to the NBA. Dan, I don't mean to to lecture on this topic, but you did put your finger on a lot of hot buttons regarding college basketball today.
Well, we appreciate you joining us, and stay away from Nikes on your chest, and storm in the court, and keep the enthusiasm, Brent. We appreciate it.
All right, my friend. Take care, Dad. Bye-bye.
Brent Musburger.